Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for having me and for giving me the opportunity to take part in this very stimulating conference. My contribution has the title, as you just said, Kuwiki Working Group Art History and Wikipedia, Two Cultures, ? And thereby names two starting points that are fundamental to understanding my position as speaker. I am, as you have already mentioned, an art historian, specializing in Middle Ages and in the early modern period. And I'm not a scholar who focuses on the history, the structure, or technology of the Wikiversum. But as part of the Kuwiki working group, I will incorporate in my talk impulses from our discussions and work within the free content online encyclopedia written and maintained by a community of volunteers through open collaboration and by means of the wiki software MediaWiki, and combine these questions with specific issues regarding the use of Wikipedia out of my fields of research. Kuwiki is a project by a group of art historians and Wikipedians, as you said, and a small group are Wikipedian art historians or art historical Wikipedians. We founded the group in 2021 with the intention, as you can read as mission statement on our website, that, I quote, "The discipline of art history should acknowledge and consider the free online encyclopedia Wikipedia as a repository of knowledge, a working tool, and an important medium of dissemination of art historical knowledge." So a threefold use of Wikipedia, and should become actively involved in the online encyclopedia. To achieve these goals, our group is working on different formats. As first project was the publication or creation of a living handbook in which, based on monographic articles on works of art and architecture in Wikipedia, we pursued the idea of providing guidelines and recommendations for the writing and editing of art historical articles. It is due to the identity, the established structure, and the workflows within Wikipedia that this living handbook did not want to confine Wikipedia's multiple perspectives to a predetermined standard or force them into a restrictive layout. That could neither be our goal, nor would something like that lie within our competence. It was much more a collaborative effort between specialized researchers and committed citizen scientists to develop guidelines for the composition of the articles, the precise use of subject-specific terminology, as well as the attempt to define the parameters for a scientific standard within art history. I briefly show you here the structure of the living handbook, which of course continues to be open to all interested parties to be reworked, adjusted, and enriched according to one's own needs and interests. After generated information which primarily addresses art historians who want to start working in Wikipedia and need general and practical knowledge on the principles of Wikipedia, as well as how-to instructions, there are some initial suggestions on how to structure and organize articles on particular works of art and architecture in a logical way in which basic aspects might be helpful. This is followed by more and more specific recommendations, which are primarily intended to address and explain particular aspects of criticism regarding articles from the field. This includes, for example, comments, as you can see under points 5.9 and 5.10, on the way objects are described, as well as, for example, the history or biography of the artworks. This includes not only the origin of the artifacts and its context of production, but also, as you can see under 5.10.6, its various locations, translocations, provenance, and the display and exhibition history. I would like to briefly explain why we consider this detailed structure to be helpful by using our definition of how to deal with lemma, object name, and therefore often title of the Wikipedia entry. I quote, "In an encyclopedia, an object is listed under a lemma. In Wikipedia, this is the title of the article page. In contrast to categories of fixed terms, such as art, painting, etc., the choice of a lemma for an artwork or the title for an artwork is often made by the author of the article in Wikipedia. This is particularly relevant for pre-modern art. But unlike modern works of art, most artifacts created before the 19th century do not have a definite name or title assigned to them by the artists. This seemingly banality is significant for art history, as for many years names have been established for works of art that appear to be their titles. However, these titles were not chosen by the artists themselves and are therefore not part of the work and its meaning. Rather, they are conventions that often include evaluations or interpretations. As an example, I show Rembrandt's so-called self-portrait as Zeuxis from Wikicommons. So-called because this title is the result of a research discussion that suggested that Rembrandt is depicting himself here as a protagonist of an ancient artistic legend. According to this legend, the famous Greek painter Zeuxis died of laughter over the vanity of an old and therefore naturally ugly woman who he was asked to paint. That means that by choosing this title for the work, the author suggests a certainty of interpretation of the iconography that is in no way given. And furthermore, an uncritical acceptance of supposedly traditional titles becomes particularly problematic when they continue to use and thus perpetuate forms of racism and sexualized violence as an alleged historical factor. To what extent this practice can become explosive is demonstrated by the answer given by the Staatliche Kunstkammer Dresden on September 14th, 2021 to a kleine Anfrage from the AfD, Alternative auf Deutschland, a popular tactic of this party regarding the museum's cancellation of discriminatory terms in their databases. I quote, the answer of the museum: the editing of work or object titles is a common practice that has been taking place in many museums around the world for centuries. It is related to the fact that until the 19th century, works of objects were rarely given titles by those who created them. In this respect, the vast majority of cases, they do not have an original title given by the artist. Instead, works were repeatedly described and titled by museum experts, dealers and collectors, depending on their level of knowledge and perspective, and require scholarly contextualization depending on the state of research. The aim of certain linguistic adjustments is to prevent people from unexpectedly encountering terms that could be used to devalue or discriminate against people on the basis of their origin, religion, gender, sexual orientation, age, or physical disposition. In doing so, the SKD, Staatliche Kunstkammer, is following standards that are practiced by museums around the world. End of quotation. A second project of kuwiki focuses on the use of Wikipedia in the field of university teaching and also attempts to provide competences to facilitate colleagues' entry into the working world with Wikipedia. Next semester, for example, two colleagues from our group will be working directly with their seminars in Freiburg and Bamberg in Wikipedia to create further examples of best practices. Last summer, my seminar and I wrote an article on the Heribert Shrine, a 12th century reliquary in Köln-Deutz. The benefits of these projects are obvious. It is motivating for the students to see how their research has an impact and is immediately perceived. They contribute to the growth of Wikipedia and also acquire a lot of experience on collaborative forms of working, on the question of what can be communicated about art historical knowledge and in which formats, on image rights, on the structuring of very complex and interwoven bodies of knowledge, on linking in Wikipedia, and many other things. Furthermore, we are campaigning to make image collections that are located in the private archives of art historians as hitherto unused data available to the community and provide advice and technical issues relating to uploading and naming of image files. For these how-to questions concerning the Wikiverse, we have established the Tips and Tools series, just as a notification for those interested. The next meeting will take place online, of course, on November 28th. The meeting will be dedicated to the topic of georeferencing and mapping with Wikipedia, since these are questions that naturally do not only concern art historical topics. I cordially invite all interested parties to drop by. All kuwiki meetings are open. After this brief introduction to kuwiki's aims and working formats, I would like to move on to my actual topic. In my title, I refer to Snow's two culture concepts with a question mark. I quote from his article from 1959, "The clashing point of two subjects, two disciplines, two cultures, of two galaxies, so far as that goes, ought to produce creative chances. In the history of mental activity, that has been where some of the breakthroughs came. The chances are there now, but they are there as it were in a vacuum because those in the two cultures can't talk to each other." I use Snow's two worlds motive for my attempt to connect Wikipedia and art history and to identify the obstacles and challenges that need to be overcome in order to eliminate the motive of can't talk to each other, and to emphasize the great opportunities that lie in the talk to each other that Snow himself evokes. After all, where the dialogue and process of reflection begins to mirror academic debates into an encyclopedic structure, fundamental questions arise for each discipline and the possibilities and limits of its communication. With regard to the relationship between Wikipedia and art history, and I'm sure many other disciplines as well, it can be said that the two worlds did not really want to talk to each other for a long time. Even in 2024, it is unfortunately still common to hear some colleagues make generalized complaints about the supposedly poor standards of articles. They do that without a willingness to look at what Wikipedia is already achieving with excellent quality, without being open to the question of what can be modeled from our academic discourses in the structure of Wikipedia, without being able to engage with these other form of knowledge transfer and the opportunities Wiki offers. Because, as Snow writes very clearly, the chances are there. The point is not for art history to lower its standards by using Wikipedia. It's about art history reflecting on what actually constitutes its discipline and what can and must therefore be articulated, and to what extent the form of the encyclopedia provides an opportunity for this. And hopefully one thing is clear: when I say art history here, it is only because I am a representative of this discipline myself and will not speak for other areas of research. But I would like to invite the present members here of other disciplines to transfer my examples to their own disciplines and to consider how this transfer could succeed and what the parallels would be. In the following, I will address three topics that are relevant for me. Firstly, authorship, secondly, integration, and thirdly, attention. And I start with my first topic, the question of authorship. Academia is known to be a meritocratic system. One's own authorship is of great importance for one's own career path. Not only the output, that is the number of articles, but also the proper place of publication, the intellectual habitat of a series, or the quantity of citations are of utmost importance. Equally, it is extremely relevant to closely link one's own name with positions within the scientific community, as demonstrated, for example, by the study Facets of Specialization and its Relation to Career Success, an analysis of US sociology 1980 to 2015, which showed the benefits of specialization as a career strategy. The clearer the thematic consistency, the sooner the jump to a professorship. This supposedly logical restriction in academia encounters a completely different culture in Wikipedia, where authorship is not, or at least does not seem to be, the top priority. Here I show you the list of names and the pie chart for the article on Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Every article in Wikipedia has such a list, which reveals the author's contributions to the article. It is clearly recognizable that there is no dominant main author, even if the Wikipedian Immanuel Giel has the largest contribution to the article with 10%. As usual, the majority is taken up by the many co-writers, most of who contribute no more than 2% of the whole text corpus. What is also striking is that almost all authors do not appear with their personal names. Many of the authors write under pseudonyms. Many are not expert in the eyes of the discipline, but representatives of an extremely committed citizen science not recognized by the scientific community. They have a different set of skills. Among them, they have mastered the writing rules of Wikipedia, are higher up in the hierarchy of the Wikiverse, and so on. Wikipedia creates the impression that it is of no importance who provides the knowledge. After all, the claim is that general factual knowledge is not to be recreated, but rather presented in an easy understandable, reliable, and widely accessible form. The habitus of the world of scholars and the habitus of Wikipedians are notoriously always going into battle with one another, but this is not my topic today. Instead, I would like to talk about a third field that does not clearly emerge in the dualism of expert knowledge versus collaborative or hidden authorship. In current debates, there are repeated calls for authors to clearly define their own position. We are living in the age of positionism. The active concealment of the speaker's origins, upbringing, institutional attachments as a strategy has been exposed at least since Donna Haraway's important essay on situated knowledge from 1988. The term has already been mentioned several times yesterday, in which supposedly other positions are marginalized and devalued as unscientific because they are allegedly associated with a particular standing point, an agenda. In this strategy, the academic position, male, Western, humanist, enlightened, appears as the disembodied, correct position, decoupled from a speaker position and beyond time. Haraway calls it the God trick, since this position is neither spatially nor temporally verifiable and thus proclaims eternally valid truth. Haraway's figure has been taken up and transformed again and again since then. For example, in the motive of homework, a term used 1990 by Gayatri Spivak to describe the activity involved in identifying the coordinates of one's location. For Spivak, homework entails a self-reflexive analysis of one's own epistemological assumptions. Or in the loci of enunciation, a term coined 2009 by Walter Mignolo to address the geohistorical and biographic location of authors as well as bodies of thought. These and many other theorists demand the active disclosure of one's own speaker's position, since the idea of an objective science seems less and less plausible. Only in doing so it becomes more visible who decides which knowledge is considered relevant, and who decides which areas of knowledge have not been taken into account, for many reasons, which certainly include the researcher's geographical and biographical localization, the institutions, politics of citations, money, visibility, and so on, associated with them. But this comprehensible and just demand for disclosure and public reflection of one's own limitations, which is so important to us as scientists, and which always includes reflection on assessments and canons, is difficult to map in the structure that Wikipedia provides. Just as an addendum, naturally, one can attempt to trace the context from which the author of the respective articles originate, and this is surprisingly quite successful in Wikipedia, almost to a greater extent than in the classic forms of academic publishing. However, this feature is not included in the text itself, but must be carried out by the users, as it appears in the, let me use, in lack of a better term, paratexts or behind texts. For example, a look at the version history allows a glimpse into the development of the article, at what point was the article created and by whom, which elements were changed or added over the time, and at which points are discussion and disagreements occurring. But this is a topic for a different paper. I come to my second point about the integration of knowledge into existing structures and the importance of interconnection. My slide highlights an important aspect of my topic. Even in 2024, men are described in terms of their achievements, while women are described relationally. You can see last year a search for Aleida Assmann only resulted in a reference to her husband. You can see how far we have come since then from the fact that her marriage is now preceded by her designation as an author. Of course, being married to Jan Assmann can certainly be described as an achievement, but sometimes one does think that women are more than just someone else's daughter, wife, or mother. Changing this is also one of the tasks in working in and with Wikipedia. The problem has been known for quite some time. The majority of Wikipedia authors are male. They continue to refuse to use gender-neutral language, and articles regarding female positions or protagonists are missing, be they researchers, writers, politicians, artists, composers, etc. This, in parentheses, is not a problem that only affects women, but as you all know, it also concerns less well-financed institutions, areas that are less thought to be at the center of Europe, other fields and forms of knowledge, and so on. My case study is therefore to be understood as exemplary once again. As part of the Women Art Historians Network, I'm involved in making women more visible with their specific contributions to art history. The reason for this is certainly no longer in question, but the how continues to be a major concern for us. After all, it cannot be just a matter of reconstructing neglected biographies or reflecting on how women were structurally and systematically excluded from institutions and key positions. Such an approach does not change the way we think about the history of art in academia. It is well known that reconstructing female position involves more than just emphasizing that women also had a share in art history. Rather, it is the assertion that they practiced art history in spite of the manifold exclusions. And not to stop at this point, but to analyze which other approaches to art history they took, whether and how their marginalized position influenced their choice of topics and the development of theory, and how we can create visibility and participation from this position of despite. A number of initiatives have been launched to tackle the gender bias in Wikipedia. One high-profile project is Women in Red, which focuses on creating content regarding women's biographies, women's works, and women's issues. Women in Red is just one example of many initiatives that try to make female positions and female actors more visible, but I chose it for a specific reason. The title refers to a feature of Wikipedia that is not only based on individual articles, but also on references and on links. A link, as we all know, is indicated by a word highlighted in blue, making it clear to me as a reader that I can click on this word to be taken to the other article. A black word is not linked, whereas a red word indicates that an article would be welcome here, but does not exist, but should exist, because it is already set up as a link. Just being set up as a link is great, because it indicates that the omission has been recognized, that there is evidence the virtuality of an article in which the name of a woman or a female position belongs. Getting there is already a big step. The goal of our network is not to further confirm the existing canon of male theorists and to add a few previously unknown female researchers to it, nor is it to perpetuate the established and intrinsically misogynistic narratives of mastery, virtuosity, and genius, and to point out that there were also good women in art and art history. But whether this goal can and must be achieved in Wikipedia is a different matter. Much more important would be to integrate these positions, which have been successfully excluded so far, into our seminars and publications. But Wikipedia offers a user-friendly way to adopt this academic development for the encyclopedia structure by allowing users to intervene in existing texts, continue writing them, insert new links, and incorporate new references. My final example, I included also Henrike Haug, one of these very famous art historians who never worked in art history. You know her because she translated Barks. I just erased it. Just please remember her as being the author of the famous phrase, dem Ingenieur ist nichts zu schwör. My final example stems from the field of medieval studies and addresses my third topic, namely attention and the related history of research. I present the famous Kappenberger Kopf in two article versions. On the left, you see the 2011 version with the first edition of the entry. On the right, you see the current version from October 2024. As already mentioned, Wikipedia offers an interesting feature, the version history, which is locked and stored in the background with a lot of additional information. Therefore, I can access the older version at any time and thus follow the writing process, the accumulation of information, as well as the changes in the body of knowledge. The changes are very clear when looking at the example of the Kappenberger Kopf, with the older version referring to the artwork as the portrait bust of the Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa, while the current version explains it as a head reliquary dedicated to John the Evangelist. Well, it comes to no surprise that knowledge changes and new insights replace old certainties. This is an integral part of research. However, one aspect of particular relevance to me is not apparent from this example. As a medievalist, I not only lecture on the state of knowledge that must be considered up to date in my courses. I rather often deal with the background of the question why certain objects were preserved and researched, who the protagonists were who took care of the preservation and research on these objects. I also look at the history of the institutions in which the objects were exhibited and displayed. Furthermore, I analyze why certain research was conducted and financed, and at what times and in which places it was important. All these factors concern the economics of attention and reveal a great deal about our history and our values. This is all the more true given the changes in knowledge also invariably reflect changes in our societies, either in whole or in part. This general statement can be exemplified with respect to the Kappenberger Kopf and the artifacts associated with it. It is no coincidence that the so-called christening bowl, die Taufschale of Frederick Barbarossa, associated with the Kappenberger Kopf and now in the Kunstgewerbemuseum in Berlin, emerges in the circle of Freiherr vom Stein and the MGH, that is the Monumenta Germaniae Historica. This edition project was founded by von Stein in 1819 after the defeat of Napoleon and the Congress of Vienna to restore the memory of the lost empire of the medieval emperors as the common history of all Germans. To this end, the written sources from the period between 500 and 1500 were to be collected and published. The Kappenberger Kopf, which was discovered in 1882 and has been regarded as a portrait of the emperor since 1886, is closely linked to the nation-building process and the creation of a specifically German historical dimension of the history of the empire after its unification in 1871. This first fortuna of the Kopf was followed by the instrumentalization of the work between 33 and 45, then a long period of silence and post-war Stauffer research, and the prominent re-emergence of the piece in the context of the highly influential first German Landesausstellung in Stuttgart in 1977, Die Zeit der Stauffer, of which the Kopf became the poster boy. All this explained why the Kappenberger Kopf has received so much more attention than other head reliquaries from the 12th century, a selection of which I have put together for you on this page. And here we have come to a few points that are of central importance to me, but which can hardly be adequately illustrated in an article format the encyclopedia wants, and which, as part of any discipline, can barely be made accessible or easily be made accessible through the so-called interessierte Öffentlichkeit. The points include the hidden narratives that shape every canon. They are part of the origins and institutional formation of the discipline, which in the case of art history began in the 19th century and whose methods and subject areas still carry the legacy of that epoch in part. They always influence what we can describe as art historical knowledge, although the question of non-knowledge often seems much more relevant to me, since a great deal of insight can be gained from the questions which artifacts have scarcely been studied and for what reasons. Out of curiosity, I checked which of the heads has its own article in the German language Wikipedia. The result corresponds with my expectations and shows how much the discipline's historical outlines and prejudices are also perpetuated in virtual space, in my case in Wikipedia. Only the Kappenberger Kopf is deemed worthy of a comprehensive and well-founded article. And to other works, top left, the head reliquary of St. Vitalis or Candidus from the treasury of the Church of St. Lambertus in Düsseldorf, and in the bottom row center, the bust reliquary of St. Paul from the Schatzkammer of the Cathedral St. Paul in Münster are mentioned in very short articles, due to the fact that they have not, of course, undergone the same scientific attention as the alleged imperial portrait of Kappenberg. Thank you very much for your attention.